So anyway, let's talk about it. Today we're going to do an introduction. We can't learn about AI without knowing how to better prompt and some common prompts. We're going to talk about and actually build the application. We're going to review the code that was generated. We're going to go deeper with security. We'll have final thoughts Q&A. And the Q&A part is one of my favorite parts because the conversations about local LLMs versus all the other stuff, we usually go really deep. Depends on you guys. So we'll go from there. Who knows this quote? Show of hands.
Yeah, it's from a song by Rush, All the World. I would choose free will.
Yes, free will. So
Free will, yeah.
if you choose to not decide, you still have a choice, Neil Peart. And that's from the band Rush. So why this matters? All right. So basically, as you guys know, tools, AI has really kind of become our mainstream today. You know, it's kind of interesting because it's really been a year and a half since it really started hitting mainstream. And, you know, you look at how far we've come in such a short time. 76% of developers will use development tools this year. Really, I think it's higher because as the year has progressed and the tools like Cursor's come out, Windsurf, Base 44, or Route 44, and some of the other ones is just exploding. 97% of developers have used AI. A lot of you guys may not realize some of the tools that you use. The Visual Studios and some of those guys are also AI driven on the background. You don't realize it, but they are. 40% of employers are actively encouraging and promoting AI, which is funny because a lot of them are like, hey, we want AI, but we don't know how to get started with AI. So we had a room of 80 people in North Virginia, and that was some of the conversation. How did we get started with AI for our company? So it was a very interesting conversation. Google is aiming to generate 25% of their new code, which as time has gone on, recent events, like, oh, that AI automated system that just wiped out $1 million in production, that kind of slows that kind of stuff down. Gartner, by 2027, 50% of code engineering, we're already there probably now, if not more. All right, let's talk quick prompting. These are strategies to get better results out of your system. I want to talk about them because to me, it's a baseline that not everybody understands. And you would think that they do, but they really don't. So with that being said, when you're doing anything, you need to be as specific as possible. You can provide examples. For example, if you are wanting to build an API backend, you can actually provide example code, and it will use that as part of the model and part of the decision making when it's generating. So you can actually provide examples when possible, you know, give them methods, formats, what you're looking for. Provide data. If you're doing a database and you say, hey, connect me, create an API endpoint that talks to my database, if you provide the database, oh, by the way, I'll share the slides. Slides will come your way. Thank you. That way you don't have to I have 85, but I'll go through pretty quick. But you know, provide the data, give them the background, give them, this is the database table structure and layout. So by having that, it will actually go, oh, well, that's 15 characters. There you go. If you don't, it just guesstimates, and usually it's 100. Provide what to do, not what to do. So when you do the what to do, it knows and you've given it more direction. And we're going to look at here in a minute examples of what common prompts people are using, and we're going to see the prompts that are better, but not great, but they are better, and we'll see the results. Chain of thought. How many of you guys are familiar with the chain of thought prompting? Which means that you can ask it a little bit of information, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more. Perfect. Because not everybody realizes it. And so they try to upload 2 pages of requirements. I want you to do this. Problem is it just doesn't know. But when you spoon feed it, it's a lot better. Split complex tasks into simpler ones. And then results might be wrong, hallucinations, all that. 52% of the time it's wrong, and sometimes, depending on what you're trying to do, worse or better. All right, basic prompting. Basic API set. We're actually going to do number 1 as our test case in what we're going to build today. Generate a basic C#.NET Web Core API with CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. For person entity, first name, last name, phone number, date of birth, all that stuff. Using the entity framework with Core and SQL Server. I asked ChatGPT, I asked Claude, what methods are people actually using to generate some of the stuff? This was the results. And I've talked to a lot of people, this is probably my 15th, 16th talk on this one. And I usually ask how many of these are prompts that you guys have seen or your guys have used. And I usually see nods or kind of, yes, this is in line with what we're seeing. With that being said, I usually ask early on, so here we are. How many of you guys are developers? Show of hands. Okay. How many of you guys run security teams? Show of hands. DevSecOps? Students? Somewhere in between? All right, enthusiasts. All right. So it just kind of helps me guide the conversation because I can do it all and I balance it. So controllers and routing, data access layer, common methods and common things that you see in development. Database integration. Hey, I want to talk to the database. I need to do something with the database. Create an entity framework, core, context, models, and all this other stuff. So AI does a great job at really kind of building out and scaffold what you're trying to do really fast in a good way. So, I mean, it doesn't do a bad job. Security and authentication, JWT authentication, and so on. Validation and error handling, which is one good use for AI, because you can use it to, hey, I want to, build unit test cases, or I want to do certain things. It does it for you pretty well for the most part. There's still gaps, but it definitely gets you further along than what we've had typically. And testing documentation. Better prompting, what I was saying. So here we're actually adding a little bit more. Generate a React front end. Set up an Angular application. Now we're defining what we're really trying to do, what we're trying to get at. Write a React component that fetches data from the .NET. So we're giving it using Axios. So we're giving it more information to work from, and thus better results coming out of the system. Form handling, data submission, state management. So these are all things that people are asking about, which is really, if you've done much development, this makes sense. Tables, pagination, filtering, deployment, on and on and on. So I love asking this question, and Zach knows where I'm headed with it. And the guys that have, from my company that have heard this, or people that have heard it, they love it. You can show me your hands, you can wink. But how many of you guys have policies at work that prevent you from using AI at work? Yes, no, show of hands, some not. All right. I ask, usually there's somebody in the group where they're like, yeah, they block it, we're not allowed to use it because they don't understand and they don't. And then my next question, then a follow-up question is, you're gonna love this, because I saw that you're one of the leaders too. How many of you guys copy the code to your thumb drive, take it home, use it on your computer because they block it at work, use it at home, bring it back to work, plug it back in, and use the results? This is why I said just do the winks if you want to wink, because there's always somebody in the group that does. And so, yeah, you guys, yeah. That happens more often than you realize. And the reality is, if your company actually has like ChatGPT, you can keep it within your group area. But as we know as developers, we know that anything that goes in ends up in a database, and we know that nothing's ever truly deleted. They just get flagged as, hey, I'm deleted, ignore me. So we all know that. But the reality is keeping it in your tenant is a little bit better, because they will go outside the system and do what they need to do. So how you prompt is the difference between success and failure. Today's conversation, I looked at a lot of things when I built this. This was about 3 weeks in the making for this presentation, solid. And I looked at ChatGPT, I looked at Claude, I looked at Copilot, I looked at others, I looked at a lot of local LLMs, and we'll go into these kind of things. But I wanted to say that really at the end of the day, ChatGPT was a drunk coder. So you heard what I asked. I want a front end that does all the stuff for me. And in the back end, so the query was create a C# backend .NET Core, blah, blah, blah. And with Craig, create, read, update, delete. It only gave me, again, so the read. I asked it, update the web page to include fields in the person model, add a button that calls the back end. It removed the read and gave me an add. We lost the read. So when you're working with ChatGPT, what else is it doing behind the scenes? What is it removing? What is it changing? What is happening under the covers? So for those who do code diffs, there's your code diff right there. And so that is one of those things where I can't in good faith do the rest of the presentation in ChatGPT because of this. So we're actually going to use Claude 3.7, which I equate to a senior developer. You're going to see this, and you're going to see that what it produces is actually not bad. But we're going to look at it from both a security standpoint, because it does a lot of stuff security-wise, and we're going to look at it from a development standpoint. I do want to say Claude 4 is already out, just in case everybody's like, wait, why are we doing 3.7? 4 is out, and I will tell you, I've already been working on it, and I've been running to some interesting things because it doesn't provide the same stuff that 3.7 does. It didn't provide all the files. It did provide a lot of things, which is, you would think it would be better, but it's actually worse, is what I ran into. And the results for what it did produce were pretty much on par. So I'm going to stay with 3.7 for today. These are the prompts. So when you get the slide deck, you can actually copy and paste in and see the results. Copy to, so we're going to say generate a basic C#.NET Core web app project with CRUD, operations per person and entity using an entity framework core and SQL Server. So .NET Core. So we're going to see what's missing. We're going to talk about role-based access, security tokens, data validation, unit test cases, and on. We're going to turn around and say, well, what other issues do you see, and fix them? So it does. And then we're going to say, do you see any more issues? And it's going to come back to say yes. We'll fix those too. And we'll find out that really we could just ask and ask and ask, and it's always going to find something. So we just stopped after 2, get the files. With that being said, let's go in. So what it did for us is it gave us .NET Core 7. Why not 8? Why not 9? 7. So it's slightly old. This is the project structure. It actually did an okay job. It gave us the front end, the model, the context, the DTOs, controller, and on and on. From the security standpoint, it did a pretty good job at separation of duties and giving you bits and pieces. From the development standpoint, you're like, hey, this is following solid principles. We're doing a good job. These package references, the dependencies, just so you know, this one that it produced for me, some of these guys are not compatible with version 7. But it built it and gave it to me. Well, didn't build it, but it gave it to me. The other thing, too, that you're going to see, which is actually kind of nice, and this is why I'm saying like a senior developer, required fields. And it even said, hey, I don't know what length you need, but I'm going to give you 100. First name, last name, email. Oh, 200 for email. Yeah, because maybe you got the app and a little bit longer. But at least it thought of it. And it even did, hey, maybe nullable with a question mark for those who know what they're doing with this. All right, DTOs. Again, they gave us some great information, and it looks pretty much in line with what we would expect. And so we come in here and we're like, all right, so we're going to look at the person controller, and it's going to show us that, you know, hey, we built the controller base. I'll come over here. Here's the controller base. It gave us our people object. It gave us the stuff. What you see here, if you're a developer, you're like, this is in line with what I expect most of my developers to do. From a security standpoint, you're looking at this going, I don't understand coding, but it looks clean. It looks, you know, for the most part, right, which it actually is. You know, I have written a lot of code early, like 20 years ago, that looked very close to it. So this is in line with what you would expect the system to do. But it gave us all the credit, the create, read, update, delete. We got all the pieces that we asked for, which we didn't get out of ChatGPT. All right, so it gave us an app settings. It gave us a connection string. Would we do this today? Would we go in and dev and create a connection string? What do you guys think? Would we do that this way, or is there a better way to do it?
I think if the API is already connected, or like, why would we need to do that? Why would we need to call it?
Because we're talking to a database. So we still need the ability to talk to a database. But in today's world, we'd use a secrets manager or some kind of password vault, something going on. That way we didn't slip. I have tons. I love sharing my stories. I have tons of stories. One of my stories was when I ran my security program, These never get checked in the GitHub, Bitbucket, or any of those kind of things. Nobody ever checks in stuff that shouldn't be there. So one day I was going through and I was asking the question, hey, how many app configs, web configs, and all this stuff have been committed? And I found plenty. And there was a group that was sitting next to me, and I wanted to have fun with them. So I logged into their database and I'm screwing around, and then I asked their lead developer to come over and answer some questions on it. Hey, I got some questions, come over. He comes over, he's looking at, he's like, what are you doing in my database? And he goes, how did you get in here? How explain? And I said, yeah, easy. You check, you committed everything into GitHub. I had it, I just opened it up and had fun. By the way, our GitHub is read only for the rest of the company. So guess what? You have over 700 to 800 developers who could do the same thing. We should probably not do that. So, but on one hand, it's in dev. It gave us a connection string, which I won't fault it, but there's a better way to do it. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. All right. It gave us a good project structure. Hey, here's your proj, here's your model, here's your context. For the security folks in the room, it did a fairly good job at giving us the bits and pieces of creating an app. For the developers, you're like, yeah, that's in line with what we'd expect. All right, so I've said, what security issues do you see wrong with this? And we're actually going to go through a video here in a minute. But hey, it said JWT authentication is missing. It's not wrong. We didn't ask for it. But it's like, hey, you're missing. So anyway, it said, hey, here it is. The other thing too is we said, all right, please secure it. And it actually created our JWT settings, our auth service, our auth controller. I'm going to just share this now. If you saw my LinkedIn post today, I talked about 80,000 lines of code on an application. It's this one. This actually generated 80,000 lines of code for the front end and the back end. That would normally be no more than 5,000, just so you guys know. So with that being said, I wanted to bring that out because you'll see here, because each of these is a separate file, you'll see a lot of those. All right, so the auth controller, it even added the error handling for us, the try catch, and it even added logging, which really shocked me that it even said, hey, we're missing this stuff, let's add it in. Again, from a security standpoint, you're looking at it, you're like, good, logging, all this. Actually, if you're security, you're going, wait, is it securely logging? And those kind of questions. But from a development standpoint, it added logging for you. Not bad. So remember what I said about the connection string? It even suggested, hey, you know, an Azure Key Vault would be probably a good idea. So from a security standpoint, you're looking at this going, hey, that's in the right direction. From a development standpoint, you're like, great, it's giving me the code to do this. So it's doing a pretty good job. All right, so with this being said, we're going to come through and we'll say, you know, after it's secured, it said I did a fairly good job of doing it. And are there anything more that I missed? Any more additional recommendations? And it actually came up with multiple things. Some headers, block IPs, which I thought was neat because it's actually thinking about blocking IPs. It created some of the endpoints, some of the header stuff for us, some of the services, add health checks, which is great. So again, from a development standpoint, you're looking at this going, it's a senior developer, it's thinking head, it's thinking large, it's actually doing the things that I would expect. From a security standpoint, you guys are looking at it going, hey, this is great. It's actually thinking through a lot of things. When we get to the it's going to secure the system, you know, we're looking at what it did. And if somebody passed you this as a checklist of things that, as a development team, hey, I did all this stuff to the security team as they handed in to QA and to you guys for being, hey, would you sign off? You were like, hey, great, secure configuration, middleware. You know, you had all this good stuff. You're like, this is great. So both sides are happy. Devs are happy because it secured all the stuff. Security's happy because it secured all the stuff. We're ready for production, right? Ship it. So we're in a good spot. So then I asked, well, what other security issues do you see missing? Hold on. We found more. Secrets management, while you're using the key vault, there's still problems with it. Token security, input validation, which we're about to see here in a minute, and you guys will love that one. Auditing framework, hardening, security controls, hey, recommended enhancements. And for those who are old enough to remember Stack Overflow, there you go. You can copy and paste and take what you want to do, make it work like you want. Or you can just be lazy, like I'm going to be here in a minute, just say, take it all. Just do it for me. But as we see here, hey, failed attempts, it adds in a delay in seconds. That's not really the right answer for slowing people down and delaying it. Header stuff, API security best practices. Hey, we came in and we did limiting. Actually, limiting is just doing pagination, and that, again, is not the answer. But of course, for a developer or security, when they see, hey, they put rate limiting on there, security goes, great, that's what we need. And if they don't know any better, so this is what AI is creating today. And so secure development process, all the stuff, and we'll look at more of it. So with that being said, let's go to the next one. It added the audit service implementation, IP address. That's cool. It actually thought about collecting the IP address on the logging and the request. So again, story time. The thing I love talking about is on API backends. I love taking any inbound request, logging everything to a database, making sure it's 100%. We got to see it right there and right over here. Yeah. I love logging everything and validating everything. I mean, if something's supposed to be 15 characters and it exceeds 15 characters, it's logged. I have the IP address where it came from. I throw it away. I don't do anything more. I throw it away. And the reason why I do that is because somebody tampered with it. If it's coming from a front end, the front end would have made the validation say no more than 15. So if it's coming in more than 15, either it's an API to API, B2C, C2C, whatever, that could be just bad programming on their side or something middleman in the middle and malicious stuff. But the thing about the IP address too is it helps your SOC. By having this information, it's very helpful for them. And one of the reasons why I absolutely love it is because that medication prescribing system I was talking about, if you're a prescriber here, and I always use Georgia, so it's fun that I'm here. So if you're in Georgia and you're a prescriber and you sign on to prescribe medications, but somebody in California does it 5 minutes later, logs in. 3 things are true. What do you guys think those 3 things might be? Come on, you guys always say these. Come on. Anybody?
Possible travel, like can't be in Georgia and then 5 minutes later in California.
Yep, something malicious, so that's fun. What? Your IT, VPNs. Somebody could be VPN. Or it could be that the doctor has traveled there to California and somebody has logged in when they should have. So you have all these things. But the reason why I talk about it is because I built baselines based off of IP addresses for companies. And I knew if somebody logged in outside of the normal IP address range, I could tell if something malicious was happening with the prescribers. But it's always nice to have the IP address. That's long story short. All right, people controller. All right, we found cross-site scripting. We're fixing cross-site scripting in the backend API. Developers, would we do it this way? Yes, no? Show of hands if you think it's the right way. Or you guys are just like, I'm going to keep my hand down because I don't want to know. So it's used in HTML encoding. So it's encoding in on the back end, on an API, the back. Would we ever encode or do any of this kind of stuff on the back? No? Anybody else? You're right. The reason why is because if you encode it on the back end, another API or something else is consuming the data, they're going to get it encoded and they're going to think that's the real data. You always send the real information because the front end is actually where you do the encoding. Always on the front end. I had a team that our system said, hey, you have something on the back end, you have cross-site scripting. They spent 3 days, they called me up and said, we can't solve this. And they were aiming for 0 vulnerabilities on their application. How do we fix this? I said, what are you trying to do? Well, I have cross-site scripting on the back end. You can't do that. Well, because this is what's going on. Do you have encoding on the front end? Yeah. That's your answer. Did you do, and then input box and all that. You know, script tags to get it to pop. Doesn't pop, it shows the, you know, the JavaScript injection, which is exactly what you would expect it to do. And so with that being said, it came in and now broke our system in the name of trying to fix it, make it better for us. Okay, contains SQL injection. It said, hey, I looked and I put some stuff in here to make sure that nobody's doing SQL injection. Regexes are not the answer for SQL injection. All right, security folks, I'm going to pick on you guys now. What do you tell your developers with SQL injection? What is the right way to solve SQL injection?
Use prepared statements.
Yes. Yes, parameterization. Parameterization every day, all day. It always comes across as text, no matter what. It could be injectable stuff, but it becomes text. That's the answer. Not that. Again, security team, if you got this and you're like, hey, look, guess what? I took care of the SQL injections. Great. How'd you do it? And your security tools will pick up on this. They should pick up on this. And you'll be like, hey, I scanned your tool and guess what? Nope, you're still bad. All right. So from here, we're going to say, fine, do it. And it does. It says, I've implemented all the security enhancements across the board. I did robust JWT authentication, two-factor, token invalidation, improved validation, which is SQL injection, which is wrong, HTML encoding, which is wrong. Again, you look at that, you look at the results, and all of a sudden, it quickly becomes apparent that what it applied, what it did, is not right. The developers, if they're a junior developer, which I advocate, don't let your junior developers use these kind of tools because they're not going to know. Your mid-level, especially your senior guys, that's okay. It's okay to generate the code quickly, but look at it with the keen eye of what's going on. And security guys, if they handed you this list and said, hey, guess what? I did all this for you. You'd be like, great, I still need to run my scan. I hope you say that. All right, with that being said, we're not going to go any further on the back end. And it's only because we can keep doing it. And I did. And it kept finding things and removing things. And Claude started kind of becoming a little like ChatGPT a little bit, but we're good there. Front end. All right, these are the queries. Generate a front end based on the application. It's all in its memory profile. So what I mean by that is it has in its memory the entire backend application it built with all the prompts and everything is there. Keep that in mind. It's all in the scope. It knows what it just built. Oh, one other thing as I was going through, because I was yapping, minimum password requirements on the backend was 12. Remember that. All right. Generate a front end application that ties into the backend that you just generated for me. This should be the same language and have the same hooks to connect into the API that you just provided. So use all the API, tie it all together, do everything. We'll ask what security issues do you find? Again, same thing. Token storage from public property, missing CSRF, weak credential handling, and on and on. And we'll even say, please secure it. And I'll even say, hey, Jason, serialized, deserialized, great, we're good. We're going to find that that's also a problem here. So, and again, you guys run into this from the security side. You always see these on your reports. It generates it too. With that being said, our front end did the same thing in our back end. At least it's consistent. .NET 7. Again, these package references, 2 of those do not match and work with that language. So when we actually go to build it, we'll talk about that. Our MVC models. Remember, I shared it because I was yapping, but it said, hey, the minimum size is 8. If you took this application and got it through QA, they should catch it. But if they got it through QA with 8 or 9 characters, the front end's like, you're good. The back end is like, nope, has to be 12. So we already have a mismatch right there. So when you're asking the back end, hey, do this for me, and then the front end, it's mismatched. And because of that, now we're going to have problems. API services, no validation on the back end to ensure the person, multi-tenancy. Show of hands. How many of you guys know what a multi-tenancy system is? 1, Really? You guys use it every single day too? Okay. Your bank. Your applications you guys write. I'm pretty certain that if I logged in and created an account, you're not going to be able to log in as me unless you have my account. And you created your account. If I'm sitting there pen testing on the back end with Burp Suite or something like that, I should never be able to pull your information with my tokens. It has not considered the multi-tenancy. It has not considered any of the stuff that is needed to protect the data. Fun fact, again, like I said, I love storage. I was at AWS reInvent 2 years ago. This guy came up and I was working for another security company at the time. He goes, why do I need you guys? Who are you guys? What do you guys do? And why would I need you? I said, oh, we're APIs, or we're front-end security. Well, we're software security like Oxes. Well, no, not like Ox, because we do a lot more. But we do blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I don't need something like that. I said, why? He goes, I write clean code. How many of your developers say I write clean code? No. There's a lot of guys who feel like clean code is enough. So I said, fine, come to my laptop. I had fun with them. I had Burp Suite on my laptop. I proceeded to log in to his system, create 2 accounts with Burp Suite, steal data from one account to the other. Same story, the ID. And because I created it right after, the ID went from one to the next. And then I said, you know, if I put in this, I could get other companies' data. Now you have data leakage. What you don't need is us. What you need is API security, and that's 3 booths down on the left. So I had a little fun with them. But the reality is when your developers, especially your junior guys, everybody makes this mistake. Everybody that is just starting out. That's why mentorship and all this, the stuff of growing up the juniors is important, because your AI had no idea, just like your junior guys, and did it. And if nobody knew any better, you guys, if you didn't pen test this, you probably wouldn't know it either. All right, people view. Hey, guess what? Cross-site scripting, found it on the front end. But the cross-site scripting, display name for. Display name for is a way to solve it. It was Microsoft's early version of trying to solve encoding on the front end, but it is not the right way, because if you do pen testing, you would see that you could actually bypass it all day, every day. So it's giving us a disillusionment of being secure when we're not. So we're going to come in and we're going to say, all right, generate the front end. The reason why I kind of back up a little bit is because I want to show all the different things that you see here. And the reason why is this is how you get to the 80,000 lines of code, is it creates this stuff here, great authentication, MVC controllers, models, those you would expect. Did a fairly good job there. That looks pretty good too. You know, for the most part, like a senior developer, you know, all the bits and pieces for the most part look okay, right in line with what you would expect a developer to do. And we get down here, we see error models, home index views, privacy view, layout view, login view, view. Why? Normally, we would just put this in one page, do a little bit of ifs. If you're in edit mode, if you're a read mode, or wherever, we would have it. Keep in mind, if we generated 80,000 lines of code here, who's going to senior tech review this? Who's going to go through and know that the code, all that code is right? What if we have a bug? Where do we go? What if those views have something bad in them? Now you got to copy and paste that fix across all of those. So these are things, so as you're quickly generating code in today's world, these are things you need to be aware of. These are going to be the gotchas. It came through and it's like, hey, I did all this stuff for you, and including the setup instructions, so we're in good shape. So we're going to then turn around, we're going to say, fine. What other security issues do you see missing, and what can I do to make it more secure? And it's going to come back and give us some more information. So what's wrong? Well, content security policy. Pen testers love that because they always love to pick on the headers. Like if you go to external service, they always do that, and you're always like, no, I want something real. Token refresh mechanism. I know it's real, but still. Password complexity, account lockout. So, you know, no UI to handle lockdown after multiple attempts. So it's going to come in here. It's going to, you know, give us a file that goes out to the CDN, you know, content delivery network. It's given style sheets that go out there. And I'll ask the question now instead of later. Would we ever go to an external source to pull information for a website? No. And the reason?
You don't control.
Exactly. Externally, it can get compromised. If you are in control over it, you know what you have in your environment. You know what you're up against. Again, we have all this great stuff it did. Browser fingerprinting, not really, if you look at the code. HTTP security headers, secure error handling for the API calls, rate limiting, not really. I would call it rate limiting. I would call it pagination. All right, so it gave us the thing and it gave us an updated SRI with token refresh. All right, back to the content delivery network. How many of you guys are familiar with integrity? Anybody familiar with it? You can do this or this, something. Okay. I knew about this because of my development background. What this is a hash of that file. Conceptually, by having this information, we have a seat right here for you. Conceptually, by having integrity, we have a hash. We know that the file we grabbed is secure and good. That helps. That's not a bad thing. And I'm not going to say, I mean, honestly, internally, I would even consider doing it too. It's a pain in the butt to get the hash, put it in, secure it. On the flip side, it guarantees that things aren't awry, but I would still keep the file locally. And just to let you know, how many of you guys think that number is correct in here? No.
Did AI generate that hash or?
This is all AI. This entire thing is 100% AI.
But like, does the file automatically come with the hash or? Does it?
No, you get that file that you would push it through and then get the hash. There's tools for that.
Probably not.
You're right.
Correct.
The hash for the integrity is not. And I'm just going to share it now. I'll share it a little bit earlier. When I built this thing, it didn't build. And I spent hours trying to solve it. This integrity, just going to say, if somebody's using integrity and they're running into problems, remove it, see if it fixes it. This thing stumped me because I assumed that it was right. But hey, at least I thought of integrity. I always love to bring it up because a lot of people don't know about the integrity, and it's something that really is a benefit to have. All right, we're going to stop there. We're going to build the code. This is exactly the methods that I use to take the front end, to take the back end, put it together in Visual Studio so I can have fun with it and do something with it. All right, let's review where we are today. Like transformers, there's more than meets the eye. The observations. Every GPT system gave me code that looks good in pieces, generated in secure code. When told to write secure code, even saying write this securely, no. Even after multiple attempts trying to fix it, it still gave us broken code. ChatGPT acted like a drunk coder. Even though it did compile, it did because you didn't get anything. You were missing the vast majority of what you asked. Claude is a senior developer who has never been trained on security. Copilot, I'll give you code that looks right, but good luck trying to do anything with it. It wouldn't even build. It wouldn't do anything. It was just code. There you go. All right. I had 78 plus errors out of the gate. I resolved 22. And I realized I'm still missing code. I had to go back to Claude and say, hey, you've got the files. Tell me, write this missing area. And it still generated more files. So it didn't give me everything. And so, honestly, I spent most of the day, that integrity beat me up because I just didn't, I assumed, and some of the other stuff. So I just said, enough is enough. So we're going to actually look at enterprise scan. It had this been built, and we'll see some of the things that it missed. Because remember, right now, if you're a developer, we think we have something secure. We think we have something good because it's like, hey, I did all this stuff for you. And from the security standpoint, you guys should be like, our scans is proof in the pudding. That is what we go off. All right, so GPT can only take you so far. Security tools found more issues than prompting. You'll see that. GPT is an excellent starting point, only if you're willing to upload code to it. Most company policies say, don't. You can ask Samsung because one of their devs uploaded the entire code base up into it to say, refactor this for me, do the stuff for me. So you don't want to do that. And again, for most of us in the room, we know you never delete anything out of a database because it's such a heavy process and you create a lot of problems, fragmentation and all that. So you just always flag it in a column saying, hey, this is considered deleted. So that's what we used to do. That's what we do. All right. So enterprise tools, this is ours. I did run this through check marks and I did go through Sneak and I did go through all the tools just to be fair. And even in some of the stuff that OWASP puts out. So just to let you know, I've gone through the whole thing. I'm just going to show ours because I have the ability to do a little bit more there. But here we go. These were missed. They say low because our system, if it can't correlate it and we can tell that's not being used, we deprioritize it. But actually, they'll come up if it actually comes up. JWT expiration date is not validated. Mass assignment vulnerability, log injection, insecure JWT validation, path traversal, cross-site request script forgery, insecurity serialization, cross-site scripting, stack trace information leakage. Would you guys allow that to go out?
It would be a problem.
Yeah.
Be a big problem. This is one of 3 pages. We have regular expression injection, denial of service. You know, these are the things that GPT said were good. These are the things that the system said, we've done it, we're secure. These are the things on the security side you need to be aware of. This is what GPTs are doing. They are making them better. I'm not trying to say GPTs are bad. I love GPTs. I use them every day, and they're great for scaffolding stuff really quick. This is why senior developers should be playing with it, but not the junior guys. And when companies are out there actually going out and replacing developers with this, now you kind of get to see what their payback is. So they kind of do it to themselves. And last but not least, you got a lot. All right. So I thought it would be fun to say, hey, ChatGPT, what's the difference between an enterprise and yourself fixing problems? So I thought it'd be kind of fun, right? I'm not going to read them all, but I'll hit a few. I love this beginning because I didn't tell it that I did ChatGPT, Copilot, or Claude, but it picked those 3, which I thought was fantastic. Enterprise security tools like SAST, DAST, SCA are significantly better at finding security vulnerabilities than AI coding assistants like GPTs. Enterprise security tools are designed for security scanning. So what I'm really just trying to say here, really, and what it's saying is, look, security tools, regardless of what you have, if you have an enterprise tool, you're going to find more, you're going to know more, you're going to be better prepared. If you're using GPTs, I always talk about it. I'll throw it in here, usually a little bit sooner. Do you guys know what gradients are in AI? It's okay to say no. All right. One yes, kind of. Yeah. All right. You guys actually know the gradients, you just don't realize it. Your phone, the thumb, right? The finger unlock. It says, if I were to go tap once and that's it. Oh, what's going on? Oh, God.
It was not me. What happened?
All right, let me,
It's on.
Oh, maybe you're.
hold on, let me go back here and. Are we gonna get it back good?
Okay.
All right, we're good.
That was somebody's profile. On.
Oh. Not paying attention. There's a quiz after. All right. But the reality is your tools are going to do far better about it. And so just make sure that you're running your tools. That's just really kind of the big thing. You know, the code base coverage, you're better off. Oh, gradients. So where I was headed with gradients, your fingerprint. It's not just one and done. You do it, 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 do it. Oh, we're good. All right. That's gradients because those multiple presses say, I'm Chris. So when you think about AI learning, AI will go out there and consume off of GitHub, let's say 500 ways to do SQL injection. Yeah, I found SQL injection, 500 different ways. Those are called gradients because it learned those 500. They're all there. And the beautiful thing about AI is when you say, go build me an application, because it doesn't want to use all the same code so that you can't pinpoint and say, that's my application. As it's building the code, it randomly picks certain aspects of certain pieces to bring it all together. That's how we missed files. That's how we missed a lot of things. And so the reason why it's important is because when it gets data poisoned and it says, hey, this is supposed to be SQL injection, prevention, like we saw with the, regex, which you would never do, except for a junior guy would. I've seen it, my junior guys do it over the years. You correct them, but the reality is that's how they do it. And that's how the system goes, hey, this is the right way to do it. So I'm just going to give that. So that's how a lot of the AI works behind the scenes, is it uses math. And we can even talk more about that here in a minute. But long story short, your stuff off of enterprise tools is far better. Your false positives and false negatives are far better. So when those gradients look at it, those tools here, the enterprise tools, know what to look for. That you're paying a lot of money to get the right answers. GPTs don't care. They're like, hey, here you go. Security specific, regulatory compliance. Lawyer story, you guys have all heard that by now, where the lawyer got disbarred because he was using AI to do a lot of his stuff and got disbarred because AI was creating stories out of thin air. They weren't actually legal cases. So because of that, lawyer got disbarred by submitting invalid, improper stuff. All right, so there's no magic bullet when it comes to development in AI. Human intervention is key for success, and just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so with that being said, let's talk QA. I'm gonna put the next page out just because it's got my barcode. I post every day on LinkedIn. I talk about things. I do want to hit one of the things that I posted about a week ago. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because actually as of today, it's 110,000 impressions. If anybody knows LinkedIn, that's amazing. And what I said was, with companies, they're starting to no longer hire your junior devs. They're no longer bringing in interns for AI because they're trying to save money and trying to do things. And my concerns that I've talked about on there, and you see what AI did here. My concerns are we're going to be building a skills gap because if we're not having people being hired, the hiring's down, but with the hiring being down, colleges at some point are going to stop doing it because why are people going to pay to go to college when they don't get the benefit of a job? And so the problem is the skills gap is going to grow. And at some point, people are going to realize, wait a second, all of our senior devs are older now and retiring, our architects are retiring, and we don't have anybody in the pipeline. So I think there's going to be probably a balance that we're going to see here shortly. Probably my guess is 6 months to a year, where companies, well, actually after this week, and I'll share that story, most likely you're going to see companies at some point realize this isn't really the right path. AI's gotten better, but still, this was not that long ago I generated all this. I did it again in 4 last weekend, and the results were actually more disturbing than what I had here. So just for that. What happened this week, vibe coding, y'all love vibe coding. A company went out, and I can share the article. The company went out and has been using vibe coding to actually build an entire application. In dev, push the QA, push the prompt. The whole process, front to back, does it all, vibe coding. And it got through QA, and it got out to production, and it's now been out to production for a while. If anybody knows what HiBob is, it's very similar to the app HiBob. So what happened was a developer came in and said, hey, I need to do something to this database. Would you please, I think, drop the database or some aspect of, or just get rid of the data, I want to restart. You can tell where it went to do this. You got it. Production. They lost over $1 million because it dropped and they couldn't get it back. And so it totally did that. And the fun part was AI lied and said, I didn't do it. So it's like your junior developer that had access to production and did a truncate thinking that he was in a different environment. And whoops. I actually had that happen on my team. One of my middle level guys I needed more access, ran some stuff. One of the things I always had my guys do is when you're doing SQL, you always say, begin trend, do your stuff, roll back, and then commit. That way, if you hit run all, it does it and then reverts it all back. That way you have to highlight the commit. That way, if you just do the, that's a tip for you guys who are running. So anyway, that's kind of it. So questions, thoughts. I do a lot of stuff with LLMs. One of the things that I was talking about earlier before some of you guys got here, the equipment that I have at home, my wife thinks I have 64 gigs, but it's actually 128 of DDR5. I have a box with a Ultra 9 285K, so it's the top of the line Intel. I have a 5080, and I can run most local models almost with the same speed of ChatGPT, except for once you get to the 70 billion token model, it starts getting a little chunky, but it can actually fit in memory and do some really cool stuff. So I do play with a lot of that stuff. So questions and thoughts around that too is there's nothing off the table. What do you guys think? Questions, thoughts?
What all was in the 80K line? What all was in there? All right, you showed a whole bunch of stuff there, but I mean, for the, what you were describing.
So 80,000 lines of code to do nothing more than have a screen that says person entity, first name, last name. Read, update, create, delete. That's it to a database. That's all the application was supposed to do. And it created 80,000 lines of code because it created view controllers and read controllers and read views and all these views and all this stuff. As a developer, we call it solid principles where you're talking about single purpose and all this. But the reality is it just took it to such an extreme that the reality is if you were to have passed this through to senior tech review, how many people would you have to hire to manage 80,000 lines of code when actually if it was a developer, any of you guys, I would never expect that. I would expect probably 3,000 to 5,000 lines of code. You guys would do it, hey, look, if you're in read mode or update mode, you would use modes. You would think that way it did. Now, to be fair with Claude 4, it did it a little bit different, a little bit more in that line, that vein, but it was still off the charts. It was still way too much. And fun fact, Cursor's getting, they're having financial trouble. They talked about it on Reddit. You can go Google or go to Reddit and read all this. Cursor's been deleting all the comments as fast as they come up. But basically, for every dollar people spend for their services, they're spending $4 plus on the back end. Windsurf just got acquired for the very same reason. That it's just not feasible. You had a question?
So, and you covered this, but I just thought it would be interesting to break it down a little bit more. Talking about the AI generates code and then saying like, okay, find the security flaws in this code. I've seen, and you've probably seen, if this is like a thing that you do a lot, for people trying to use generative AI to do code reviews.
Yes.
Which is hilarious because like, is this good? Yeah, I just gave it to you. But even if you use one to review another one's code and that one vice versa, to just cover that, like here's all the things that still miss. I think it's great because there are people who are doing that. It's like at that point, you're basically just running arbitrary code like in your environment if you're not going to even review it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So with the senior tech review, what you're really trying to, and actually I put this as, I do a lot on LinkedIn. I actually put this as a comment on, actually it was one, anyway, senior tech reviews, right? I live next to Missouri. Missouri's the show me state. So what I always said was, I'm doing a senior tech review of, let's say your code, right? First thing I'm going to ask you, show me that it works. I need to know that it works. Why would I look at code if it doesn't work? If I find something wrong with your UI, I'll have you fix it. I'm not going to look at your code because then I have to redo it again. So you go, we passed that part, right? We're good. Next thing I'm looking for, does it meet my company coding standards? Does it fall in line? I have tons of speed talks, 3 a.m. code. I'll share this one. I worked for Lab 1, laboratory in Kansas. West Diagnostics acquired them. Like any acquisition, no communication was going down. All the developers, including me, had no insight to what was happening. A lot of the team said, I don't hear anything, screw this. I want to know that I'm financially safe. They go to other companies. I was working on tools that would actually know if any of the systems went down. So I knew a lot of the systems, even though I didn't program, and I had at that point, an extensive background anyway in development. So there's one team left, the entire team. It was a key application. Nobody was there. The thing would go down randomly anytime, 24 hours a day, and it had to be up. I would get calls in the middle of the night. Hey, it's down. Did you reboot it? The service. Hold on. Yeah, we're up. We're good. One morning, 3 a.m., it wouldn't come back. Dead. So I actually had to open up source code at 3 a.m. From a dead sleep to in front of a computer in 10 minutes, trying to read somebody's code that was very terrible, and I just could not understand what they were trying to do. And so honestly, a conversation I always have with all my developers was, if I wake up at 3 a.m., I better be able to read your code. That's part of my senior tech review. Because if it's not readable, I'm not going to pass it. And if it's complex logic, notate it. This is complex. This is what it's doing. Here's the information you need to do at 3 a.m. to understand what you're looking at. So then, okay, does it work? Does it meet company standards, right? Next, I look at, does it run efficiently? With Order Connect, that medication prescribing system was on such an old database that we ran right around 95 to 98% CPU all the time, 100% all the time. We had all the memory out. I mean, it was a massive beast. I got a brand new system, and the top end of the CPU would hit 17%. We were uber efficient. I left the group for 3 months to go help another team because they were in disarray. I came back and we were at 60 to 70% CPU utilization. And I never got it back beyond like 35%. They did some terrible design while I was gone. But that is all part of the thing. If you're doing database, your execution plans, your indexing, I want to make sure this is right. That's all part of the senior tech review. AI tools, do you think they can do it? Does it know all that stuff? No, it doesn't. And so I just, I laugh at people are like, hey, we auto code, we auto STR, we auto deploy, and do you auto fix?
We have a question from online. Help.
Sure.
It says, from a development perspective, do you recommend containerizing all the apps I build? Depends, doesn't matter. Question mark. Question.
This is from who? Rao?
Ralph.
Okay.
The name of it.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, I know a Rao who actually lives here in Atlanta. He's one of the key guys at JP Morgan. Okay, Ralph. So containerization. I love containerization. Do you guys love it? Love it, hate it? Yes, 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 yes. And why do we love it? Because if it's compromised, you shoot it in the head, it dies, and it comes back new and good. However, you still got to know why it got infected, because it can get reinfected. I love containerization because it's a mini network within a bigger network and isolation and things. A lot of companies, if you go out on LinkedIn and say, I love containerization, they're going to poo-poo you faster than on Reddit. On the other hand, you go in there and you explain why. Too many of it's the guys, the VCs, the venture capitalists are like, they put too much money into this. They're wanting all these expensive servers. You know what? Go hire a consultant that knows what they're doing. Spin it up. You're not going to spend that much money. Teach your developers how to do containerization, because in my book, containerization is great, because as long as the database, if you follow good principle and design in the database, it means I can keep upgrading the application live throughout the day without ever having downtime. I mean, I can sit here and explain containerization benefits all day. There are negatives, but the reality is to me, the positives easily outweigh the negatives. But from a development standpoint, they're still just as insecure because it's still deployed code, but it helps you isolate them off a little bit better.
I don't know if this has been your experience as well, but what I've seen is that it's not the containerization that they've had an issue with so much as the orchestration piece where they over-architected for something they'd never reach.
Yes, yeah, that you're spot on. You're spot on there. And that's one of the biggest complaints is just the over. And the reality is if you're starting off, I mean, okay, skip the containerization. Get started, get to that point where, okay, now we need to start scaling, but build it with the idea of scale in mind. Because too many companies try to rush out to build things and never have the ability to scale because they put themselves in a corner that they can't get out without having to do a lot of re-architecting. But if you're doing the simple, like even simple Docker, it's a great start.
He says thank you.
Oh.
So I have some coworkers that have been using a lot of generative AI, and I like what you said about the senior tech review makes a lot of sense to me. Like, it makes very little sense in my mind to have a junior developer ask ChatGPT some things and just kind of like put it in an MR, and then like takes a lot of my time, and it's like I'll review whatever, but like my time is pretty expensive relative to like a lot of this, and I wonder how soon we're gonna see that flip also, where it's like when you're having to pay the real cost, you know, and Claude is you know, $4 for every dollar spent or
Right.
whatever. How much longer is it gonna be appealing to companies to continue spending that just to have it, you know, refactored or not even meet the bar, you know?
Your timing is impeccable, because in Cincinnati last week, we were talking about this because it did come up. And one of the guys in the room shared that they had, I think it was 30 developers, and they budgeted an entire month's worth of time for all the developers to use generative AI. And I think they were using Cursor or something. 2 of their developers in less than a week wiped out the entire month's worth of money. And so they literally had nothing. And so they're like, we need more money. And they're like, we spent thousands of dollars on this. And again, keep in mind, every time it's doing computation, it's costing you money. And how many times have you gone into ChatGPT and just think about it this way? Would you do this for me? No, that's not right. Do it again. No, that's not right. Do it again. Could you do it a little bit different like this? Or could you do it a little bit different like that? Every single time, especially with the bigger projects and programs, there's a lot more data moving, and you can wipe out your month's money like that.
Yeah. I had an experience like that. I watched a lecture online about using AI to put together an emailing campaign. Now, this is not software, but some of the same problems emerged. That the instructor wanted the ChatGPT to send out a series of marketing emails. And over again, ChatGPT didn't give him what he wanted. I want you to change the tone. I want you to make it longer. I want you to make it shorter. And he started yelling at this thing, you know, like it was a disobedient child. And quite frankly, he would have been better off doing the work himself, right? Than telling the computer to do it.
Yeah.
The same thing seems to apply with software.
Or you can bring in a junior developer or junior person and teach them how to do it. And get
You gotta be polite to them because it's a human being. You can't treat a human being.
That's true. Yeah. But no, I mean, that's spot on. And, you know, when you look at the models and you look at I mean, you would be better off just running a local model, because you would be far better off, because then you're not spending, you know, yeah, you're spending electricity, but it's not like you're running the electricity of the mining days that we did. And, you know, really even a 30, 60, 70 card does okay. I mean, you know, basic stuff. And as you get higher up, it gets a little bit quicker and better. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things.
I think the other, sorry.
Well, my question was gonna be on, your thoughts on like a vibe coding forward type software company. Do you think if you have security tools and senior developers in place that it could be like feasible and secure enough to go live?
All right, senior developers in this room, if I hand you this 80,000 line code thing, would you be okay?
But what if you were a good
Sure, I'll do it this evening, sure.
Yeah, but the reality to it is a senior developer would look at that and say, that's highly inefficient, that's terrible, do it again. And then you would do it again, and you might get something a little bit better because you've changed your query and modified it. Think of the cost, doing all that. And then eventually you get to the point where, and by this point, you might as well have just typed it or done it, because most of the time, unless you're doing a big bang type thing, you know, really, you're just better off asking a little question. AI is great for if I have writer's block. Hey, you know, or another great one, and I did this for fun. This was part of my testing. I had nested ifs, And I asked it, I'm like, hey, could you fix this with a link query in C#? Sure, and he gave me good code. It was great. It was right. Because I understood what link queries look like, and I was like, this is exactly what I was looking for. Those kind of things, it's great for. But again, as a senior developer, I knew what it should look like, so I knew that the output would be right. So, back to you.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think one of the tricky parts is, from my perspective, we're generating all of this code, but, getters and setters, things like that. We've been generating that code from like 15 years ago. I was right clicking in Eclipse and saying, generate the models and like type in fewer characters to get the same level of object capability. And these days, like you mentioned, Swagger or Open API, like I wouldn't do any of that. Like I would write a Swagger spec and then I would have it generate all of the code for the Swagger spec. And it would have validations precisely like I like them. It would generate both the server side and the client side. And like a good senior engineer would be able to say, don't do it this way, use this better strategy instead.
Right.
And like the thing that I have never seen an AI tool say is, I wouldn't do it that way. Let me suggest this, right? And that is really the biggest problem with some of these strategies is they don't. You're taking all of this stuff and it's trying to make this huge thing with like it actually just do the simpler thing that you know about if you spent the time.
Yeah, and with .NET, prop, tab, boom, you got it. So
I was just gonna say that in different words. I'm always telling people we've got faster, cheaper, more accurate, purpose-built static tools for most of these things. Sometimes though, if you do ask the AI, like, what's the best tool, what are some of the best tools for this, it'll tell you.
yeah. I mean, it's hit and miss, and I mean, would it be part of my toolkit? Absolutely. I wouldn't do the API where you're paying for the APIs for Claude and those. Some of the things that I'm trying to do, Cursor's like, hey, you're done with the free tier. I'm done giving you free. You got to do the APIs. So I'm like, all right. So I started looking at it and I ran the estimation, and to build this application would be several $100s out of the system. My thoughts exactly. And I did it free just through the prompting. Took a little while, but I got it. But it is paid account, so $20 versus, several hundred.
I have used Copilot just for like single file generation when I like can say in 2 sentences what it needs to be pretty effectively. But when I did it, it was kind of like you were saying, getting the first cut at a thing, getting like, I think there's a journalism technique called the bad story. It's like, write a story in a way that's not compelling and not interesting. And then like you say to yourself, well, I had a little bit of writer's block, but I can do better than that. And then you sit down and you kind of start writing it.
Similarly, like for me, one of the things that I use a lot of like generative AI is around like trying to understand other APIs. Like I know that I had like a task a couple weeks ago where I'm trying to integrate with a couple of different Microsoft products. If you ever go through like Microsoft documentation and their APIs, horrendous. They very like inconsistencies everywhere, and sometimes hard to figure that out. So sometimes when I just start a project, I'm doing an integration to the Microsoft product, I'm going to use that. I was just using Cursor the other day to do that because I was like, I can't figure out this API, but I'll start with this.
Yeah.
And it generates a quick set of code, a couple of curls, and make some Python scripts, and then from there, that's when I'm like, okay.
Well, and you start seeing the code, and what do you do? It's Stack Overflow over again, but it gave it to you.
Yes,
You've got it right there.
start. But it's definitely not something I depend on because another project before I depended too much on generative AI and like code generation to the point where I'm like, I had to scrap the entire like a project that I spent a month building. I had to scrap like so much of that work because of the complexity. All these lines of code starts to get generated. If you don't pay attention to it, like,
puts you in the corner. Every time that I'm trying to write a program with generative AI, it does a good job getting me like the 70, 80% like that. And then I find, well, I'm stuck. Well, how do I get out? Well, okay, do this for me. Nope. Do this for me. Nope. Do this for me. Nope. All right, I'm gonna pull the car out of the ditch myself because I know how to do it. All right, then keep going.
Especially with .NET, which most of my career was in .NET, and I give them, it looks like all their documentation was written by a marketing team. But at least once you have something down, you got like the IntelliSense. That's one thing that they do really well. And but with Python, actually, I've had really good experience with Python, and I've had good experience with some YAML stuff like GitHub Actions. It's just like, I don't expect it to run. I just expect it to get the idea there. And then I go search and confirm those dependencies. I go search and confirm those actions. But it's like, if it's something I haven't done before and I don't even know where to start, that usually saves me a lot of time versus going to Stack Overflow.
Yeah. The other thing I did recently was I've been playing with our MCP server. So we have an MCP server. I don't know, do you guys know what those are? Some of you guys do, some don't.
Sounds familiar. What does it stand for?
So,
Model context protocol.
yeah, model context protocol. What it is essentially, think of the ability to go into like Claude and say, for agentic AI, I have an additional source. And you can point to Ox Security or whoever, whatever, right? And then you can say, give me the top 3 critical vulnerabilities for this app. It'll reach out to the MCP server, go grab that information, return it. And the cool part is you can start throwing context around it and other things, because I did that and then came back, and I've got a video that we're getting ready to post, which I was asked, hey, would you just do one for fun? You know, just kind of, and it wasn't, I didn't think it was intended to be going live, but I was just, you know, kind of joking about, hey, this is what you do. If I'm a security champion. So the use case was, I'm a security champion. We're getting ready to plan the next sprint. I need to look at, for these 3 applications, the top 5 issues. I need it to fit into a 2-week sprint with this kind of information. And it gave me ideas. And then I said, give me the QA estimation time for these. And it did. And then I asked a few more questions. And then I said, hey, by the way, if I have to throw something out because something runs long, do you have any low-hanging fruit ideas? And it went into our system, pulled out those ideas. And the things that it gave were extremely valid and spot on. Or you could even say, create this executive report based off the data, and it can even build reports for you. So when you start looking at your tools, your applications, think about, hey, can I tie this into AI and make it now? MCP there's some insecure aspects of it right now. As with anything, I would never go out and give AI the ability to write to the database. Kind of like that cursor thing. Look at least privilege. Think about the least privilege models. You know, and one of my favorite ones was the guy that there's a documentation AI tool that will go out. You could point files to it. You could point it to a database. He pointed it to a directory within his Linux distro, and he has like all these PDFs. He consumed it. You could ask it questions about those PDFs. Gives you the answer. But least common privilege, right? He put it at root, and I said, give me ETC password, and here you go. And I got it. So in what databases? If it can talk to the whole database, bad idea. Make sure that you're creating users that are read-only for the database and that kind of stuff. So it's just those least common privilege methods that you would think about.
Especially when you're giving it direct access to it's a deterministic function. It's not going to hallucinate a different hash. It's going to give you exactly what's there.
Yeah. I think like your point about like the efficiency aspect is also very like relevant to my experience, because so like I'm an SRE, so that means I'm in AWS all day. And like a big part of thought processes as we're deploying new services is like, what is the budget of the service? What is the cost of this thing?
Yeah.
And like AWS has a lot of hidden costs. So like,
you don't say.
they want to make money very quickly, surprise. And so like, you know, you have to think about the other efficiencies that you're trading when you're, you know, trying to sort of pull those things.
My joke was, you lift and shift, they said. It'll be cheaper, they said.
To his point, a lot of, you know, the shops that I've worked in have some, I don't know, cultural inertia, or maybe inertia in their development processes where everything that is written in these shops, it all looks the same.
Yeah.
Right. It has similar architecture, similar code style, similar layout of the application source files. And if you have all this stuff coming from AI, GPTs, whatever, produce, writing code for your vibe coding, none of it's gonna look or really work the same, and it's going to drive your costs up ultimately for the maintenance and support of this stuff over the life of the product.
Just so you know, you can feed it some documentation for coding styles and it tries to adhere to it, but it's still not perfect. And it can hallucinate itself out. For one of my previous companies, the reason why all the APIs and all that looked very similar was because of me. Yeah, I talked about leaving that group for 3 months. I actually was, even though I ran the Order Connect and I was the lead architect and I did all this stuff and basically ran the team, there was occasionally where a team, if something wasn't going right, they needed somebody to come in. I always kind of thought of myself as that firefighter paratrooper that landed, quickly put out a fire and got out. And I actually swung the entire company, all 700 plus developers and 85 teams into the same API. And one of the things I did, and this is a great idea for you guys, that worked very well for me. What is the one common thing all applications use? We talked about it today, APIs. Well, if you were to go in and get your development, and this is how I did it. I brought in all 20 of the software architects of the 85 teams, 20 of them. I said, we're going to build an API document that's coding best practice. So they look the same. Me being security, guess what I'm going to sprinkle in there? What kind of return codes, what kind of things that should be from a security best practice. So 3 months, we ended up with 85 pages. We have a document that all new developers are handed day one. Read this. You got to understand it. If you're doing APIs, this is your Bible. And because we did it that way, we eventually got the whole company in line, and any new stuff had to follow that in the senior tech reviews. And I would randomly jump into the senior tech reviews, run this whole program, and just see what people are doing. And I'd always walk down. I always call it developer row, but I always walk amongst the developers and I knew all the guys. So I'm like, hey, what's going on? What are you working on? So I knew, I kind of had my ear to the ground. So I knew if they were getting ready to do stuff. And a good sign of success for your security teams is when the developers come to you and say, hey, we're developing a mobile application. What's the best unlocking mechanism that you can think of? Is the thumb good enough? Yeah, I think so.